On this week's On.net, I have my good friend Jeff Fritz on talking about how to modernize your web forms app to Blazor with his web forms components for Blazor. So tune in. Welcome back, everyone, to On.net. I am your host, James Montemagno, and I'm really excited today because I have my good friend, and maybe even some say best friend in the world, Jeff Fritz, with me. How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, good to see you, James. Thanks for having me here. Nice
Yes,
digs.
in your virtual space. I like it. Yes.
Yeah.
And many people know you as Mr. C# Fritz on
That's
Twitch
me.
and Twitter and GitHub and all the places, Jeff. Let's
Yep.
just be honest about it.
Yeah, it's a brand.
Well, where can people find you, Jeff? Because you're sort of like everywhere on the internet, correct?
I try to get around a little bit. You can find me Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, GitHub. Yeah, all the places. C# Fritz. You can find me out there. Even the blog, csharpfritz.com.
I love it because, now we have so much live streaming content that's happening all the time on .NET Live TV. And you've been in and out. What's it been, like 4 years, 5 years? How long has it been since your first Twitch stream?
I started streaming 4 years ago. It was November 2017 was my first stream. So
Huh.
we're keeping things moving here.
It's awesome. And now it's kind of like everywhere. And one of the really cool projects that I saw you build live is what we're actually going to talk about today, because there are many developers that are looking to get to .NET 6.
Mm.
And Jeff, I hear you talk about something called Blazor every once in a while.
Oh yeah. I've got a thing for Blazor. I really enjoy this new user interface framework that's from the .NET team that really helps folks that are building websites to take advantage of that component first technology that we're used to when we build with things like WPF, Xamarin, right? Those XAML technologies that you're familiar with, and quite frankly, we used to have in web forms that build with components and compose components, one component that's made of several different components that you can reuse on various pages, screens. Well, Blazor gives you that technology back in a way that you can either run your code on the server, or if you're really excited about this, you can try running it in the browser using a technology called WebAssembly.
Yeah, very cool. And I love the best part of this is because, I'm a client developer, and you're web developer, but
Yep.
both of us, we can just write C# everywhere. We don't even have to write JavaScript if we don't want to anymore, because Blazor lets you run that C# on the server or in the browser. It's in the browser.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think about all those folks that are building with Angular or Vue or React, these other technologies. They have to go and learn how to interact with their JavaScript and their C# code, and maybe they have some Python running around on a server. And to be able to have that one stack of C# that runs front to back, really convenient for code reuse.
Now, you said earlier that sort of Blazor has a sort of same component model that web forms developers might be familiar with.
Yeah.
So what do our web forms developers do if they want to kind of modernize their applications to Blazor? Is that a possibility?
It's a little bit of a struggle for folks right now, because what we're talking about is not just going from web forms to Blazor. It's not just two different web technologies, but you also have to cross that gulf of going from .NET Framework to .NET 6.
Got it.
Now, I mean, it sounds like it's all .NET, but yes, you're still writing C# in both places, but you actually need to cross over this framework conversion, which is not something that folks are going to find terribly easy to do, changing frameworks. But there are some steps that folks can take to reduce the amount of work that they have to do.
Oh, nice. And we have the upgrade assistant as well that can kind of
You got
help in. Now it's cool because actually recently we had Mark on, who he talked about moving DOS blog from framework to .NET Core into .NET 6 with ASP.NET 6. And they went through that entire journey as well. And he just talked about all the perf gains, being able to run it on Linux now and be able to put it everywhere. So it did take some time, but what he told me was, he said, there's this large chunk of functionality that's not UI, it's not the web, it's not anything. I can just run that. I don't even have to change it. It just still runs great. But what if they have web forms sitting around. Jeff,
Yeah.
is there a way to move
So
forward?
so the way to move forward, we've actually written a book about this. There's an ebook available out there on the Microsoft Learn, not Microsoft Learn. It's in the Microsoft Architecture repository. You can learn all about how web forms is compatible with Blazor server. Now, it's not compatible in the sense that, well, I can just lift my code and run it on Blazor server, but
Mm.
the concepts that you know, the concepts of pages and components and putting components on pages, rendering on the server and sharing that, those concepts are all the same.
Got it.
The technology that you use between the two platforms changes slightly. And you're absolutely right. Those non-user interface changes, the non-user interface features that folks are using in their application, you can pull them out and put them into class libraries. And we're already pretty good at doing that when you're just on .NET Framework by yourself, right? You can do that refactoring without moving everything around. You're still on .NET Framework and you're in good shape. But the next steps to try and get things over into Blazor, that's where folks have a little bit of a challenge, and that's where these components that I've been building on stream come in.
Ah.
I mean, it's one thing to have markup that points to components, and if I want to move that from web forms to Angular or Vue, well, there's different technologies to build out those user interfaces. But what if you could use the exact same tags with the exact same names that take the same attributes, the same methods, and output the exact same HTML?
Ooh.
Yeah, now there's a compatibility there that will help you test and migrate parts of your application from a page that references components
Mm.
into a Blazor page that uses Blazor components that look and feel the same as your web forms pages.
I like that approach because it means I don't have to control A, delete everything, right? Which is not what a modernization should be. The nice thing is
No,
that you can move forward. And this is really cool because this is something that doesn't often happen when, it's not just this was Blazor V1 to Blazor V2, you know what I
no,
mean? And like,
no,
this is like, these are two different web frameworks, which usually means
no.
you got to redo the UI completely, right? But what you're saying is there is a natural progression here
Yeah.
thanks to these components that you've been building out.
It's something that we feel is um, important for developers to be able to do, to press that fast forward button. And you know what? I don't have to go through all of the .NET Core migration. I don't want to go through all of the change to MVC from web forms and introduce a web API and these things.
Mm.
I don't want to have to go through all of that because I'm migrating to Angular or Node or these other things. If you're staying with C# and you want to check out Blazor, and like you said, take your web application so it runs cross-platform, Windows, Mac, or Linux, put it into a container, run it faster than ever before. Yeah, this is a good way to move forward, we think.
Awesome. You want to show it off, see what we got so people can see it hands-on?
Absolutely. Let's take a look. So here's the model website that we show this with. This is the eShop on Containers website, and this version is running on web forms. Now it's a typical storefront website that has a search results page here, and really this is one of the more complex pages that are inside this application, right? We've got a grid view here that has a couple links to go through to the products so you can even create new product, but this is really where there's a lot of code happening inside web forms with custom controls, putting images on the screen, creating this grid. And it's something that is in a lot of web forms applications. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
So we've been able to take this and get it running in Blazor, and it looks for the most part the same. I got a little bit of CSS to take care of in here, but with very, very similar markup, reused markup, I'm able to get it back and forth between the two formats, and reuse a ton of my code that's behind the scenes doing all the database work and stuff. Because really, what we're migrating is the user interface, how it's being rendered for the browser.
That's really cool because, the nice thing is that this wasn't like file new. Like this is a realistic application that's out there today. You might have, for your catalog, for your eShop, right? So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
cool that one is actually, if you didn't catch it really quick, you can go back and forth. You might not even tell the difference.
Yeah. Right. I changed the header here so that you knew that you were on the different version of the application. But
That's
there's a
cool.
little bit of CSS work to be done there. We squeeze this in on one screen versus here. It scrolls across, but for the most part, that's just a little bit of CSS change.
Very cool. So how did this happen? How did you make this work? I'm so excited to find out.
So let me go over and show you the web forms version of the code and just talk through just a little bit of what we see here and how it gets converted.
Okay.
And when we look at Visual Studio here for that default ASPX page, right, we've got things going on here like give me a route address for this link that's up at the top. And this is an ASP content element inside of a master page. And we have things like those master pages inside of ASP.NET now in Blazor called layouts.
Hmm.
So we can reuse that same technology moving forward. And we've duplicated the master page over there so we get the same layout. But I've got a list view here that's outputting information for catalog items here. And it looks like a layout template with a table defined here and a placeholder that says, here's where you place the individual items for this page. And I've got images and I've got a data binder happening here, two-way data binding, stuff that for web forms developers feels pretty natural. ASP hyperlink elements here, like this is pretty typical thing you're used to, but you're used to working with the ASP colon namespace stuff in here that denotes that this is a web forms component. So how do we get that running in Blazor? So the Blazor web forms components, we looked at these and said, well, we can do the exact same HTML. We can render the same things and create the same templates and capabilities. So when I switch over now to the
Whoa.
Blazor version,
That was a fancy transition. I thought like
you like that?
there's like a slider control. Like sometimes like you're sliding between two HDMIs.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know. You're just like, ooh, I'm sorry, you just blew my mind.
It's this amazing, cool technology called Visual Studio split bars.
Amazing. I love it. All right, cool. So this makes sense
But
to me because I see that there's like the ASP that kind of reminds me of a lot of work I've done on in XAML before, right? They're like, these are third-party controls almost that I'm
yeah,
bringing in
yeah.
into here, but those are really components, is what you're saying.
You got it. So I can bring over, because Blazor is built with HTML in mind, I can bring over that same div that I had at the top here. And instead of
Oh,
going through and using this route thing that was over here, well, I can just specify I'm going to the catalog create location,
oh,
and it
cool.
knows how to reconcile that for me. But the first big place that we see a web forms component is right here, this list view. Now, it's not ASP colon list view because we don't have ASP colon inside Blazor, but it's list view. And instead of ID, it's ref and it's the same name. And
Whoa.
item placeholder, same. Run at equal server. We actually ignore that. The item type is the same on both here. And this context item, that's a little extra bit there so that we know how to refer to the content inside our templates.
So I'm seeing very, very similar,
Oh,
different colors in Visual Studio. One's Razor, one's
exactly.
ASPX,
You got
but
it.
extremely similar, like almost as if you copied and pasted and just tweaked whatever squiggles were there.
Exactly. ASP placeholder exists in web forms, while we use at item placeholder over here because I define that up here
Oh,
as
okay.
it's the same ID that was over here inside web forms. I just use it in the same way that you would a Razor element right here.
So some tweaking, just a tiny bit of tweaking, but
Tiny bit of tweaking. The real rubber meets the road when we take a look at the data binder over here. Like, oh gosh, this thing doesn't exist. What is this? How do I do
yeah,
data binder eval? Well, we just take out that web forms markup for the two-way data binding and go right into databinder.eval, and it
wow,
works.
yeah,
Or item catalog brand item catalog brand. So we can do a quick find and replace on that stuff, and we end up with everything working the same way.
wow. That's really neat. And look at that. Those are just normal hrefs because you no longer need a special
An ASP
hyperlink.
hyperlink. There is
Wow.
a hyperlink component available, but
Hmm.
this was easier to write.
Very cool. I mean, honestly, they're literally almost the same amount of lines of code. In fact, it looks like the Blazor one's a little bit shorter.
It's just a little bit shorter. I have the code all moved out into the back end, the code behind that goes with this Razor file.
Yeah.
Fine, but all the stuff down here for the pager is exactly the same.
Wow. That is really neat. So
Yeah.
how did that actually work? Because list view, that's not part of Blazor, right?
So list view is not part of Blazor. Let me scroll up here to that one so you can see. Yeah, list view isn't part of Blazor. It's part of this Blazor Web Forms components library. You see it there, Blazor Web Forms components dot list view.
Got it.
So I can reference and use some of these components that have the same name inside my Blazor application when I add the NuGet package for Blazor Web Forms components.
Wow. Well, that's even nice. Honestly, if you were just even creating a new application and you just were using and you're used to web forms components, you might just want to use these in your app. I might be familiar with a list view, and that might be great.
Oh, absolutely. And we haven't finished implementing all the components and all the features. We've got a lot of them done. We've got a lot of them in a serviceable location, but we're looking for some feedback. We're looking for some feedback from folks like you out there that are watching, and to see what you need. How does this fit in? This is a completely open source project. What do we need to round out here? How do your applications work so we can make sure that those features are fully implemented? The data binder is something that we implemented when we looked at this demo and thought, gosh, we'd really like to be able to use that exact same syntax. So we built a data binder.
Very cool. That's awesome. Now, is there a place that people can go to like see what's implemented, or like obviously it's open source, so I'm imagining there's some GitHub somewhere.
Yep. So I do have a GitHub repository available, and we have a link for that, an AKAMS link that we're going to share. AKAMS, there it is, Web Forms Blazor components. It's out here. It's under Fritz and Friends Blazor Web Forms components on GitHub. That's where that link will take you. And inside here, you can find links to documentation about the components that we've got completed. You can find links to live samples running on Azure that implement things like the tree view component, the grid, how the grid works, forms and how all those work. And you can move forward and get started. And I've got links to all the components that are implemented and some that still need some work that are out here that you can start using.
Very cool. So they go to that link on there. And did you say there's a sample gallery that we can take a look at?
There is a sample page that you can click through. You'll see a big button right at the top of at the top here that'll take you through to those components working in a Blazor application out there on Azure. And I have a tree view component over here that works just like it does in ASP.NET Web Forms, but it's Blazor now with the exact same markup.
This is very cool. So you can actually take a look at your existing web forms applications, see, if you're looking to modernize and go to Blazor, take those forward, you can see what's available. Else people can contribute. So it's all open source. It's all right there.
It's all open source. It's all right here. We're happy to take pull requests. We're happy to take issues from folks that are looking for some additional features. And it's not too hard to move forward and add new features, new components. But the real questions are around, what do folks need us to finish implementing here? Because we got to a point with development where we weren't getting any more feedback. What do we do? What are those next steps? We could finish implementing this, but then what? Yeah. So we pressed pause, and we want to hear from folks like our viewers out there.
And this is cool because you actually, if we look at the GitHub page, like you just updated it to .NET 6, right? So like
yes.
it's ready to go. I think what we'll do is in the show notes below, I'll put a link to the upgrade assistant, also to this repo and to the sample as well. And people can give feedback. It's so cool. There's a bunch of contributors and people.
A bunch of contributors, and I've got some documentation over here, even with some hints about how to migrate. A complete list of steps for how to go through and apply each of these techniques to get you into Blazor.
That's awesome. This is amazing because, I saw you build them live, and I think, but talking through the concepts and seeing that side by side and just how similar that code is real
Mhm.
magical.
It is. And we hope that folks are able to take this, get into Blazor, see faster applications, and be able to get out of .NET framework where you're not going to be able to work with things like content security policies. That's not a thing in web forms. So you can get over into Blazor, faster application, modern technologies, and you're going to be more productive wherever you want to deploy the app.
Very cool. Jeff, thank you so much for showing this off, and we'll put links below. And of course, you can where can they find you, Jeff?
My gosh, the first place to find me, of course, csharpfritz.com is my blog, but you can find me, I am C Sharp Fritz on all the platforms, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, PayPal, all the places you can find me. I'm C Sharp Fritz.
Awesome. And you're live streaming Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Thursdays, Tuesdays.
Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, I'm at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. You can find me on Sundays at 10 a.m. Hanging out, building cool things like those web forms components.
Very cool. Well, go hang out with Jeff on his live stream. I do it all the time. It is a blast. But thank you, Jeff, so much for showing off these awesome components.
Oh, it was great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Go check out all the show notes below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and ding that notification bell so you get notified every single time we put our new episode right here on.net. So until next time, I'm James Montemagno, and this has been On.net.